so risky to try to make a living with art. But Jordy was compelled to create.
Jordy was always chill. I've never seen her upset, but towards the end, you could see the darker stuff come out.
When she didn't show up, her mother knew something was wrong. It was enough to drive her to file a missing persons report.
I actually located a steak knife in the bushes. I just remember thinking, holy crap.
We want to talk to you about it, get your side of everything.
We were just horrified something like this could happen to somebody like Jordy.
Once I made the connection, the glasses being hers, I started thinking that there's a lot more to this than just a missing person.
Your fear is you're not going to find her alive.
Spring 2016, St. Augustine, Florida. A picturesque seaside town with a thriving art community. Jordy Hudson is in her element, fresh off a successful art show.
She stood out from everybody else. She was always into what her passion was, art. Me liking art and her being an artist, I kind of looked up to Jordy. Always nice, genuine person. Way chill, way mellow.
Her work was different than most anything I'd ever seen. It was very visceral. Jordy put her heart and soul into it.
It was real, and it was genuine and original.
Jordy came from a family of artists, and from an early age had a strong persona.
She was just one of those people that just was very confrontational. It was evident in her personality, it was evident in her art.
She was tattooed, she was real punk looking.
She was always on the fringe. She was always out to make a statement. A leader, never a follower.
In 1985, at just 15 years old, Jordy attends the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. After that, the School of the Museum of Arts in Boston. And by her early 20s, her art is exhibited in galleries across the country.
It is so risky to try to make a living with art. But Jordy was compelled to create.
But Jordy's success is not without its struggles.
Jordy had meningitis, and possibly as far back as her college days. She had issues of lightheadedness. She had some serious muscular problems to the point where she literally could not walk or talk.
Jordy was sick for a long time. I knew that she was on some type of medication.
In 2012, when Jordy is 42, she moves from Milledgeville, Georgia, to an apartment in St. Augustine, Florida, to be closer to her mother, Judy.
Jordy's mother was a big support for her. Her mother was her caretaker, driving her around and handling her medications, which were numerous.
St. Augustine turns out to be the perfect place for Jordy to continue working on her art.
It literally is an artist's hangout. It has quite a vibe to it.
St. Augustine's always been a pretty artsy town. Way back when, there was a kind of a big hippie scene.
In late summer 2012, Jordy's success hits a setback after her health takes a near fatal turn.
She could not speak that clearly. She talked about having had dizzy spells. She was having to use a cane at some point, so she was having a very difficult time with this meningitis. Her illness brought out some rawness, some real heart, real emotion in her artwork.
She put her illness into her work. You could see the darker stuff come out, and it stuck out. And I believe that's because of her illness. Jordy only mentioned her illness 1 or 2 times throughout the time I knew her. She wouldn't let that hold her down.
I just think that her having this fatal disease couldn't help but influence her. I own a gallery called Space 8 here in St. Augustine, and I gave Jordy her show in 2012. That whole exhibition was under the context of her dying soon, like very soon. In advance of the show, we always get media coverage, and at the time, there's a publication called Folio magazine. They were sent to cover her and talk about her art.
Very first meeting, Jordy was one of those people that was memorable in so many ways. I photographed Jordy at her studio. She was in bad shape. They're not pleasant, happy photos. She was in a difficult time of her life, so we tried to reflect that. This cover shot, I didn't direct her. She was so good in front of the camera, and she would just bare her soul to me. She was a dream subject, somebody that wears their feelings on their sleeve out for all to see.
She had a teardrop tattoo under one eye. That was the only tear that could come out of that eye because she had no more tear duct. Just sad.
It's so striking that it was hard to take a photo that didn't mean something when you take a photo of Jordy. She was a very genuine and heartfelt person. When I was leaving, she said she wanted to give me a gift. She insisted that I take this medallion and do treasure it still.
This issue of Folio Weekly is released in November 2012. Jordy's friends and family believe this will be her final art show.
Because we got so much press and because the story was so unique and compelling, it drew a big crowd. People were very excited about it. She was literally on her deathbed leading up to the show, during the exhibition. And I think it was just really emotional for her to get the acknowledgement for her art, not her, illness.
And soon, perhaps motivated by the show and the feature, Jordy's health improves.
It had gone into remission. I remember being surprised and being, happy that she beat it.
Over the years with Jordy, we would run into each other, would talk, and it's normally only about our art.
Here's an artist who apparently was recovering, who was getting stronger. She was back on the upswing.
She had that attitude that I'm totally comfortable with what we're doing, and she was great.
Jordy was just thriving and creating art in not letting her illness drive her.
On Monday, April 11th, 2016, Jordy doesn't show up for her weekly visit with her mother, Judy. That causes Judy to become concerned.
Jordy Hudson would stop by her mother's place on a regular basis to pick up a stipend for rent or for food. When she didn't show up, her mother knew something was wrong.
When 3 days go by with no word from Jordy, Judy contacts the St. Augustine police.
At first, we weren't really concerned. We get calls all the time. My wife didn't show back up home. She hasn't been home all weekend. And come Monday, she shows back up because she's, been out partying.
I wasn't sure if she was just hanging out at someone's house, never came home.
But with these kind of investigations, we have to turn over every rock. We started looking at police reports and hospitals to locate Jordy.
The day Judy reports Jordy missing, Sergeant Etheridge responds to an unrelated call at 88 Cedar Street in St. Augustine.
The homeowner had called and said he had seen somebody's personal effects in his driveway, some blood on the sidewalk, and he wanted to make sure that nothing had occurred, that no one was hurt or injured.
When I went up there, I started talking to the homeowner. He showed me a pair of glasses, and where the blood drops were, they were right on the edge of out by the road on the driveway, close to the fence. Took, some samples for evidence, just in case something came up of it at a later time. I went and collected the pair of glasses and brought it back to the police department.
When he returns, Sergeant Etheridge continues reviewing Jordy's case and makes a disturbing connection thanks to the photo of Jordy that Judy had given to the police department.
The photo she provided had Jordy in dark frame glasses.
I scrutinized the photos a little bit more. I was able to see the hinge on the glasses detailed, and I compared them to what I had in my hand, and it was a dead ringer for the glasses in her photo. Once I made the connection with the glasses being hers, I started thinking there's a lot more to this than just a missing person.
We're thinking maybe she had gotten into a scuffle, something like that had possibly occurred.
Investigators worked to identify Jordy's final moments.
I watched the video surveillance. I knew she was definitely with somebody that night, and that was our first break.
Last time I saw her was when she walked out the door. No idea that would have been the last time.
And using every tool in their arsenal, they focus on finding answers.
There was video surveillance directly in the area where the blood was located. How did we get so lucky?
It was when we showed her the picture, and she realized that we knew what we were talking about and that she needed to fess up.
The day Jordy Hudson is reported missing, detectives have discovered her glasses in the yard of a home in St. Augustine, Florida.
Myself and Detective Watchcott went back out to 88 Cedar Street and started really doing a lot of more detailed search.
Not too long into the search, we discovered a large amount of blood in the bushes.
There was a significant amount of blood. But it wasn't just somebody tripped and fell. It was a lot of arterial spray on the bamboo, on the fence, and, puddles of blood.
There was enough blood that we realized something definitely bad had happened to Jordy. I was starting to look through the underbrush. As I was moving it apart with my hands, I actually located a steak knife in the bushes. I just remember thinking, holy crap. One of the first things that we did is we went to Jordy's house. I looked around to see, was there a struggle? Did something happen? Is furniture overturned? To see if any items are missing. But nothing seemed out of place.
As detectives are leaving Jordy's home, they run into her neighbor, Fred Stanley.
While we were at Jordy Hudson's house, Fred Stanley was trying to get our attention. We walked out to him, started talking to him. We asked him, hey, when's the last time you've seen Miss Hudson? And he goes, well, we were at the Giggling Gator bar the prior weekend, which was the 9th of April. She was supposed to show up at her mom's house the Monday after the time she was at the Giggling Gator, and she never showed up. That, in turn, led us to go to the Giggling Gator to try to get video that night of who she was talking with, who she might have left with, and just any information that could show us where she might be.
Detectives head straight to the Giggling Gator, which is just half a mile from 88 Cedar Street, where police located Jordy's glasses and the knife the day after she went missing.
The Giggling Gator is basically like a dive bar. We've been there for just various, calls for service, fights, or whatever.
I worked at the Gator off and on for about 12 years. We do get a lot of tourists, but at the end of the night, it's usually people we already know. The police. I was at work, and they came in and said Jordy was missing. You feel worried. And you wonder, if they're safe or not. The next question is, what's your involvement with Jordy? I'm just a bartender, and she's a patron.
With any investigation, one of the first things we start looking for is video surveillance. And I personally knew the Giggling Gator had a lot of video surveillance from previous cases that I'd worked.
The detectives are in luck. They're met with a treasure trove of video. They scroll back in time to Saturday, April 9th, hoping the video will shed light on Jordy that night.
There was no audio with the video surveillance from the Giggling Gator, so we have to try and put our mind in interpreting what the video is telling us.
The Giggling Gator was a little bit hectic. I noticed a couple of males that were in the back of the bar arguing.
They continue scanning through the video second by second. At 1:36 a.m., they spot Jordy. And she is wearing the glasses police found at 88 Cedar Street.
I was working that night, and she came in. She said hello. First thing I asked, how you doing? What can I get you? You could tell that her spirit was up. Jordy was having a decent night, a good night.
They also see Fred Stanley, her neighbor.
I could see Jordy come into the bar and that Fred was following her in. They ended up hanging out, having a couple of shots. And after a while, it looked like they got into a verbal argument. And Jordy seemed very upset and agitated.
You're just trying to figure out what was the incident between Mr. Stanley and Jordy?
It kind of looked like Fred was trying to get her to leave and she didn't want to go. Eventually, Fred left the bar and Jordy stayed and continued to have a couple more shots.
The argument caught on video leads detectives to wonder whether Jordy's neighbor, Fred Stanley, may be responsible for her disappearance.
We watch Fred leave the bar and walk down the street. It was never in any of the other video surveillance that would indicate he came back to do anything to Jordy.
By looking at the video, you can eliminate people or you can include people. And in this case, with Mr. Stanley, it excluded him.
Jose tells investigators he didn't notice anything unusual inside the bar that night.
I remember actually taking a break or have a cigarette. Jordy explained her new pieces and stuff. She did mention, like, some of my stuff could be dark. She asked questions like, are you into that type of work? And I told her I'm very open-minded. Just have to see it and see if I like it or not. So I remember when I said that, she smiled and she said, that's cool. Maybe you should come check out my new work. That's when I agreed to do it. You know, like, okay.
Jose doesn't know that these will be his final moments with his friend.
Last time I saw her was when she walked out the door. I just remember her saying, I'm gonna go hang out with some people. I expected to see her later on that week. No idea that would have been the last time.
As the detectives continue watching surveillance footage, something catches their eyes.
We saw the outside surveillance cameras, a large male and a couple other guys taking their shirts off like they were gonna fight.
I remember there was an altercation. There was an incident with two guys outside that I had to take care of. The bigger guy, I remember grabbing him and, you know, giving him a bear hug and trying to pull him back. He was a little bit bigger than me, intimidating. You know, the tattoos, the size of them. It was the first time and last time I saw that guy.
The large male was covered in tattoos. One was a big giant sword and head tattoos. After that fight kind of dispersed is when you see Jordy walk outside and begin conversing with this large white male with the tattoos.
They didn't seem like they were having issues, Jordy and the male. We noticed two of the males walk off with her.
The glasses were on her face when she left the bar at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then as of Monday morning, those glasses were in the driveway next to blood.
Whoever the men seen walking off with Jordy are, they are now suspects in her disappearance.
I knew she was definitely with somebody that night, that something had happened, and that was our first break.
Your fear is you're not gonna find her alive.
On April 15th, 2016, a day after Jordy Hudson's mother reported her missing, investigators have found surveillance video of her leaving the Giggling Gator bar with two unidentified men.
We saw the outside surveillance cameras, and we saw her leaving with those two individuals.
Watching the video surveillance, I knew Jordy, but nobody else had a name. I had no clue how we were going to figure that out. It's during the time that I'm watching the video surveillance that one of the bartenders says he recognizes one of the males and knows his name, Trinity Boykin. Trinity had gotten into the fight with the man that Jordy had left with. Trinity was not a suspect only because we saw Trinity leave, and he didn't leave with Jordy. So when the bartender told me that he knew Trinity Boykin from the video surveillance, that was my first clue that, okay, maybe he can have some other names for the other subjects. My goal at that point was to get him in to talk to him. When I ran Trinity through our police database, I had his information, his telephone number.
Detective Ochkai contacts Trinity and asks him to come in the following day for an interview.
So when Trinity comes in for the interview, we told him, you're possibly a witness and we just want to know the information that you know. He tells me that he had a history with Harry, which was the guy's name that he gave us.
Trinity does not know Harry's last name.
He tells me that they ended up arguing over an ex of Harry's that Trinity was now friends with. Trinity didn't like the way that Harry had treated her, and so it came to blows outside. But he says, you know, I left and I haven't seen Harry since. So at that point, we just start figuring out a way we can find Harry. This is somebody that we needed to track down and talk to.
As they work on identifying Harry, investigators are also trying to learn more about Jordy's movements on the night she disappeared.
At this point, we decide to look to see if we could find more video surveillance of Jordy after she left the Giggling Gator.
We weren't sure where they went, but we had some idea because the investigators had found blood on the scene on Cedar Street.
We hit every road and house in that neighborhood looking for video to see if we can see them.
There's a lot of bed and breakfasts back there because there's some historic homes. If you had a B&B, you certainly would have had some security.
One of the Airbnbs had a pretty good video surveillance system that had night vision that was pointed pretty much directly in the area where the blood was located. We were like, how did we get so lucky?
Investigators immediately begin reviewing the footage, hoping it will show what happened to Jordy on the night of April 9th.
It's very time-consuming because you're watching the video frame by frame, minute by minute, the same time as it's actually live. You don't want to speed through it because you could miss something.
Though the footage is grainy, they spot two individuals walking down Cedar Street at nearly 3 a.m., shortly after Jordy left the Giggling Gator.
When we picked them up on video, that third subject was no longer with them, and it would just appear to be Jordy and this large white male with tattoos on Cedar Street.
Two people got to one spot. You can clearly see them walking down the street. You're like, okay, this is going to get me somewhere good. We're getting closer to finding out what happened on Cedar Street.
They're talking, and then at one point, they were walking down into more shadows across the street where we located the blood. And now they look agitated. They look upset. They look like they're arguing.
The headlights of an oncoming car illuminate what happens next.
You see what appears to be an upward motion with the male's hands as if he's stabbing the female. And the next thing you see is she's on the ground and he's dragging her body into the driveway. We had no clue that that's what we were going to recover, that it was going to actually be a video of her being stabbed and then tossed over the fence, and we were just shocked.
Detectives in St. Augustine, Florida have uncovered home security video, the horrific final moments.
I watched that video, and you can see him pick her up and throw her on the ground several times, and then finally at one point he picks her up and throws her over a little white picket fence and just walks away like nothing had happened. The difficult part was there's no ifs, ands, or buts in my mind. I was watching Jordy get murdered.
The police, they came and said Jordy had been murdered. That'll hit you hard. You'll stand back and look at it. I can't imagine it. It's shocking. felt sad about her, losing her, knowing that I'm probably one of the last people to talk to Jordy. It made me think, okay, this is the last place she was at. What happened to her? Could I had maybe 5 more minutes of conversation? Could I had changed the whole night? That runs through my mind, what could I have done for this been prevented?
Well, everybody was shocked that that could happen here. We were just horrified trying to figure out how something like this could happen, especially to somebody, like Jordy. I mean, just unthinkable that somebody could do that to somebody that's so vulnerable.
Now I need to do everything in my power to find where she is so I can at least give her mom that closure that she needs to be able to bury her daughter.
Despite the poor quality of the video, police are able to determine the man who killed Jordy is the same tattooed man who was seen leaving the bar with her.
He had a very distinct tattoo of a cross, and you can barely see it because, again, the quality of the video is not good, but it was good enough that you could see that tattoo on Cedar Street, and it matched the tattoo that he had from the Giggling Gator.
Detectives have only been able to identify the suspect as Harry and have no way to track him down. They turn back to the surveillance to see if they've missed anything.
At about 6:30 in the morning, we see a car pull up directly in front of 88 Cedar Street, and the back door opens up.
2 people exit the vehicle. Detectives recognize the first as Harry, but they can't identify the woman who is with him.
We could tell that the female that was with him was very short. She did not appear to be taller than the car.
You can tell that she's acting as the lookout.
You could see Harry lift up what we believe was Jordy over the fence and put her in the back seat of the car. He gets back in the driver's seat. The female with him gets back in the passenger seat, and they drive off heading eastbound on Cedar Street.
When the car leaves, as it drives by, you're doing everything you can to maybe get some identifiers to the vehicle. We could tell from the video that it was either dark blue in color, possibly black.
As they're watching the video, one of the detectives states he believes the car is a Nissan Versa.
We were like, there's no way. We can't figure that out just by a video. And he was like, I'm telling you right now, I recognize the taillights and the headlights. It's going to be that car.
If they can identify the owner of the vehicle, it could lead them to Harry.
I'm trying to go frame by frame and get any information and get that tag number. We had a couple more tools in place that could enhance video, help us get that tag number. One of the guys that works there, he's great with video. He can do some stuff with video that's amazing. We aren't lucky enough. We were able to identify that tag number. At that point, they were able to identify a last name of somebody that owned a vehicle matching that description.
We were able to pull up the license tag.
The vehicle comes back to a woman named Judith Branson. A quick search reveals she has a son named Harry. Investigators now have their suspect's full name: Harry Branson.
After we got the last name Branson, we were able to pull Harry's police record. And fortunately for us, when somebody goes to jail, they take pictures of all their tattoos. And the one tattoo that stood out with Harry's police record was a very big cross on the front of his chest and his skull tattoos on his head.
Eyes, the height, the weight, everything else with the tattoos, he was easily identifiable.
Now, knowing his name, there actually is a way we can find him.
St. St. Augustine police identify Harry Branson as the suspect in the murder of Jordy Hudson. They can't find him, but they do get hold of his mother, Judith.
She told us she knew nothing of what had occurred. She had woken up the next morning and her car was where it was supposed to be and she had gone to work. And all of us believed she didn't know what her son had done.
Miss Branson wasn't aware that he had taken her car, and at first she's like, no, that's not him, because we showed her a picture of him. The large tattoos all over his body and the head tattoos. And eventually she's like, yeah, that's my son, Harry. And she agreed to let us go through her car to see if we could find any evidence. We opened up the doors and we saw a lot of reddish-brown stain that appeared to be blood. At that point, we sealed the car up and it was transported to the evidence techs to go through and see if we can find anything.
At that point, Branson knew we were on to him. He found out the police were talking to his mother, and he ran.
Detectives believe their best lead to Harry may be the woman seen in the surveillance video with him, but they still have not been able to identify her.
We started looking for females that he could be associated with.
They discover police recently responded to a domestic dispute at Branson's residence. The victim in the report is his girlfriend, Christine Thomas.
We discovered that Christine Thomas was very short. She was like 4'11", and she matches the height description when she was standing next to the car.
So Christine's brought in for an interview.
Hey, your name?
Christine.
Christine.
Do you know who I'm talking about when I say Harry?
Harry Branson.
Yeah.
We have had an on-again, off-again relationship since I got here in January.
Have you ever been to Cedar Street here in town? Do you know where Cedar Street is?
No.
I'm going to tell you that we have several videos from Cedar Street or Friday night into Saturday morning with a female that looks very similar.
It's you. Okay. I want to know why I have you at Cedar Street on film.
I don't even know where Cedar Street is.
She definitely is not being cooperative. There were quite a few questions that she totally lied.
That video shows you and Harry, okay, on Cedar Street.
And I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm telling you, Saturday morning, we have several surveillance cameras.
It's having to be pulled out of her instead of telling the truth.
This is Jordy.
Yeah, because I've never seen a lady in my life.
It was when we showed her the picture of the Versa and her standing there next to it on the passenger side is when she realized that, you know, we knew what we were talking about and that she needed to fess up.
Would you share with me what the first thing out of your mouth was when he called you? So you said to him, what the fuck happened? What did he tell you?
Harry said, hey, we need to go check this girl I got into a fight with. She tried to rob me. So they drove down to Cedar Street where the incident occurred.
All of a sudden, she pulled a knife on her. Well,
Pulled a knife on
Harry.
On Harry? Okay.
So he either went like that and pushed her or whatever, and I guess she flew over a fence.
Branson put Jordy's body in the back seat of their car. They drove out to County Road 13, and he ended up burying her body.
On April 19th, 10 days after Jordy Hudson's final moments were caught on video, detectives arrest Christine Thomas. That same day, they finally track down Harry Branson.
Branson had been on the run. He was hiding maybe a half a mile away in a little creek behind some people's houses.
Lucky for us, we were able to get the U.S. Marshals involved, and they were able to get him in custody.
On the way back to the station, Branson says he wants to talk.
What happened?
I about got in a fight at the Giggling Gator, and the people I was with took cabs and left.
As an investigator, one of the greatest things that we can do with a suspect is let them talk. So instead of interrupting him, we let him tell his whole story, because eventually the evidence is going to prove otherwise.
It was the girl and some guy. They said they was gonna give me a ride home.
Okay.
But we had to walk back through the neighborhood to go get the car. And next thing I know, we walk around the corner and both of them pull out knives on me. Started saying, empty your pockets.
He stated that to protect himself, he killed her. He was scared, he was frightened, he didn't mean to do it.
The guy hauled ass.
Okay.
He just dipped out.
After Branson was completely finished with the story, the decision was made that we would let him know we had video surveillance. Once I told him we had video surveillance of the whole crime, he put his head down, closed his eyes, and sat there for a little bit. And then after a couple of minutes of sitting there, he looked up and said, "Okay, I'll tell you the whole story."
On April 19th, 2016, 10 days after Jordy Hudson was last seen alive, St. Augustine police arrest Harry Branson for her murder. Branson originally claimed he killed Jordy in self-defense, but now he says he's ready to tell the truth about what happened.
We have the whole thing on video. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to be 100% truthful with us. Branson told us that they had left the bar, that they had been hanging out and talking, and at some point, Jordy said something to make him mad.
I don't even know what she had said, but I snapped. I completely lost it, and I don't know why or how.
He punched her in the face. And his story was that at that time, Jordy pulled the steak knife from her purse and tried to attack him.
She swung the knife at me, and I grabbed her hand and shoved it back at her, and it stabbed her in the throat.
She was much smaller than him, so if he was trying to attack her, I don't know that that is wrong of her to pull a knife. She may have pulled a knife, but you can't tell that from the video.
After his interview and him eventually telling us what had occurred, he agreed that he would give us the location of the body so that we could put Jordy to final arrest.
Branson leads police to his property in a rural part of the county.
When you go up and you turn to the yard, there's a fire pit right over there. Under the fire pit.
Did you burn her? No.
I buried her. I freaked out. I didn't know what to do.
He told us that he had started a bonfire afterwards so that nobody would see where he had just recently dug up the ground.
All right, so she's buried right there.
Yeah.
We had the evidence technicians from the sheriff's office start coming out, and we started excavating the fire pit. Ultimately, we located Jordy Hudson. She was wrapped up in a shower curtain in the hole about 3 feet down.
Her injuries are consistent with what Branson described in his confession. But there's an additional grisly detail he failed to mention.
Apparently, he cut off her fingers to remove the rings. It was unknown if that was a robbery or just an attempt to remove rings that might have helped identify her. What really gets me is that one of those cut off fingers was shoved into one of Jordy's neck wounds.
When the results of lab tests on Branson's mother's car come in, they strengthen the case. The blood is matched to Jordy Hudson.
Officials say Branson has been charged with murder and Thomas has also been charged with accessory to murder.
Branson faces a mandatory life sentence for the murder of Jordy Hudson. But in a bid to avoid life behind bars, he pleads guilty to second-degree murder and abuse of a dead human body.
Branson is a very violent subject. He would not say why he did it. He refused to tell us what exactly she said that made him mad.
Without the video, this crime may never have been solved. We may still be here today trying to find out where Jordy's at.
On May 30th, 2017, 13 months after the murder, Harry Branson is sentenced to 50 years in prison. For her involvement in the crime, Christine Thomas pleads guilty to accessory to second-degree murder and is sentenced to 8 years in prison.
The way she passed, that's just, nobody deserves what happened to her. That's not normal. Makes you think like what you could have done, or what would, could you say something else? It weighs heavy on you. It's something I'll never forget.
To create art seemed like such a natural part of her. She was just larger than life. I regret not acquiring a piece of Jordy's art. She was one of the true originals. I just never expected for her to die, because then it's like the creativity stops,
These kids were so innocent. They were Christian kids. They were really made for each other.
The state park ranger goes over the beach and sees what looks to be 2 people in a sleeping bag. It was immediately clear that they were deceased. It didn't appear a murder-suicide, and absolutely nothing was missing. Who did Jason and Lindsay know? Where have they been? Who could they have ran into? Is there anyone that would want them dead?
He had frozen animals in his apartment. He was definitely kind of living on the fringes.
It was parents' worst nightmare.
That doesn't happen to normal people. That happens in stories and movies.
August 2004, El Dorado, California. Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen are beginning one of the most exciting times in their young lives. They're getting married in less than a month and enjoying a beautiful Northern California summer as they count down the days to their wedding.
They were unlike anybody I had ever met, and they were very warm to everyone. There was not a mean bone in their body. Jason was super, super friendly, just a very free spirit, did his own thing, had his own style. And Lindsay had the most peaceful personality I've ever met.
Lindsay grew up in Fresno, Ohio, in a loving family alongside her older sister, Carrie.
What a joy to have that sister for Carrie. She looked just like him, even as a baby. She was just a beautiful child, and she just completed our family.
I'm not sure she looked exactly like me. Once when she was doing a harvest party thing, she dressed up to look like me. At the time I had a mustache, and she penciled in a mustache and wore a suit and tie, and I felt very blessed and honored that she would do that. Very sweet kid.
They went to public school up to a certain grade, and then we homeschooled. Her social life was here at church.
Our church was kind of the center of not only our lives, but our girls as well. We really emphasized being a spiritual family, and that's exactly what we are. When she was a little girl, she told her mother and I that she'd like to be a missionary. And we were really pleased and proud of her for that.
After earning her high school diploma, in 2003, Lindsay is accepted to a Christian college in Bradley, West Virginia, 220 miles from her home in Ohio.
Her older sister went to Appalachian Bible College, and so that's where Lindsay decided to go.
She was really involved in the outdoor life ministry they had there.
The school's outdoor ministry combines nature activities like whitewater rafting with religious instruction.
She really was good at counseling young kids and leading them and showing them Christ.
During her first semester of college, Lindsay has an unexpected, life-changing moment when she meets 26-year-old Jason Allen.
He'd graduated and went back down to be a whitewater rafting guide, and that's when they got together.
Jason is from West Michigan and shares Lindsay's passion for spiritual outreach through the great outdoors.
He came from a great family, and he grew up in a wonderful home.
Jason told his parents when he was just a little guy that he felt called to be a missionary. I believe that God brought them together for that very purpose. These kids were so innocent, you know. They were Christian kids. They were really made for each other.
Just 5 months later, in February 2004, Jason approaches Lindsay's parents about taking his relationship with their daughter to the next level.
Jason came to talk to me while we were sitting in our living room. And then he said, "I am so nervous." And so he actually asked for Lindsay's hand in marriage, and I said yes.
And they were just a puzzle piece that fit together.
Lindsay and Jason set a wedding date in September. They planned to spend the summer together working as counselors at a Christian adventure camp in Northern California.
During the day, they would take the kids whitewater rafting, rock climbing, and long hikes and swims that really challenged the kids.
The camp is located in Coloma, California. It's right on the South Fork of the American River. You can literally walk out of your tent and, maybe 200 yards down to the river bank. It's super peaceful and really beautiful.
On the 1st of June, 2004, Lindsay and Jason load their car for the drive from Ohio to California.
The last time we physically saw her, she was a little nervous. And I remember seeing her walk off, and it was kind of like some of these things you look back now on. It's almost like you had an inkling. It's really weird, I don't know. The female intuition type thing.
When they arrived at camp, everyone's new, and I just remember seeing Jason and thinking, he's so tall. And Lindsay was pretty short, and so they were a little bit of a funny couple just because of the height difference.
Every Sunday, Jason and Lindsay would come out of the camp and find a payphone.
She'd call and talk to her mom for a while, and then she'd talk to me.
On Friday, August 13th, as their exhilarating summer begins to wind down, Lindsay and Jason plan one last adventure. They head out for a 2.5-hour road trip to San Francisco.
Everybody had the weekends off. That last week, their plans were to go out to see the Golden Gate Bridge and camp and get away because it was the last weekend and they wanted to spend some alone time together as a couple. Sunday early evening, you would be expected back to camp around 4 or 5 o'clock because that was when we prepped for the week.
That Sunday evening, the couple doesn't return to the camp.
They took work serious. So when they didn't show up, first it was like, this is weird. What's going on? But nobody jumped to any kind of crazy conclusions. They thought, oh, well, maybe they got stuck in traffic, or maybe their car broke down because they drove a really old car.
When Lindsay fails to make her weekly call home, her parents grow concerned.
We were nervous when the phone call didn't come because she never missed a Sunday.
When Monday rolled around, the concern was growing because we were thinking, okay, well, if their car did break down, I'm sure they would call us by now. But nobody knew where they were. And that's the moment where you go to that dark place of thinking the worst.
Monday, the camp called and said, do you know where Jason and Lindsay are?
We knew immediately something was wrong. The next day, we flew out and then the search began.
Investigators discover a window into Jason and Lindsay's final moments.
Both got big smiles on their face, just enjoying a tourist day out in the city, enjoying life.
Gifts from the beach, the pictures, and these writings.
And chase a possible killer who stays just out of their reach.
He was definitely living on the fringes, alternate lifestyle. He was somewhat savvy with weapons.
She had messaged him saying, maybe I should just go turn you in for that 50 grand reward. And why don't you go shoot some more people and try to get away with it?
It's been 3 days since anyone has seen Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen. Lindsay's worried parents fly from Ohio to California, where the couple were working as camp counselors.
We went directly to the sheriff's station and talked to the sheriff deputy.
We get missing persons cases all the time, and most of the time it could be anything. It could be something simple.
He said, maybe they went and got eloped and got married. I said, no, they wouldn't have done that. They're excited about this wedding. They're serious about this job. That just wouldn't have happened.
Deputies tagged the license plate of Lindsay's red car as missing in the DMV database. Kathy and Chris next head to the Rock and Water camp, where Lindsay and Jason's fellow counselors, wondering if the couple returned early and ran into some kind of trouble, have already started their own search in the area.
They're all outdoor adventure type people, so they knew the places where they could possibly have fallen and gotten hurt.
We searched night and day.
On Wednesday, August 18th, 5 days after Lindsay and Jason were last seen driving away from the camp, a park ranger is traveling along the coastline in Sonoma County, about 165 miles away.
He came upon a red car. It was off the side in a pullout, but they're facing the wrong direction. So this park ranger, he runs the license plate, and it immediately flagged like, hey, this is a missing persons case out of El Dorado County.
The car is parked along the highway above Fishhead Beach, a remote, picturesque location near the town of Jenner, 80 miles north of San Francisco.
It's just a beautiful place. It becomes steeper and steeper, cliffs, but gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous place.
The park ranger hikes down to the beach in search of the missing couple.
The state park ranger goes over the beach, and sure enough, he sees what looks to be two people in a sleeping bag down there. It was immediately clear that they were deceased.
The ranger alerts the sheriff's department, and deputies rush to the scene.
More deputies arrive, and they secure the scene.
Deputies discover that both young victims were shot once in the head. In backpacks next to the bodies, they find 2 driver's licenses, identifying the victims as Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen.
It wasn't immediately clear what exactly happened. There's no weapons here, so it didn't appear a murder-suicide. Absolutely nothing was missing, so it doesn't appear that it was a robbery. There was no sign of any type of sexual assault.
Investigators look for anything that might yield a DNA sample that could be traced to a suspect.
One of the things that was collected was this beer. So we get DNA off that, but we don't know if it's involved or not.
They used metal detectors to look for shell casings. They didn't have that at the scene. The killer collected the shell casings off the beach after the murders. So that's just a cold, calculated murder.
As the investigators continue to process the crime scene, news of the awful discovery quickly makes its way to the camp and Lindsay's parents.
They found their bodies on an isolated beach. What they thought was a safe place was a parents' worst nightmare.
I remember it like it was yesterday. But the owner of the camp, he said, Jason and Lindsay were found, but they're dead. I remember thinking, this isn't true. This can't be true. That can't be my friends. That doesn't happen to normal people. That happens in stories and movies.
Back at the beach, detectives find a disposable camera in Jason's backpack. Hoping there might be photos containing clues to what happened, they send the film out to be developed. Several hours later, the photos come in. What detectives see deepens the mystery of Lindsay and Jason's final moments. Nothing in the pictures indicates that they were in trouble or feared for their lives.
As horrible as it is, how cool, because there's photos of them. You see the San Francisco skyline in the background. They both got big smiles on their face, just enjoying a tourist day out in the city, enjoying life.
Detectives soon arrive at the camp to meet with Lindsay's parents and offer what comfort they can.
It was really hard to fathom why in the world anybody would kill them. But some of the greatest detectives in the world from Sonoma County came to us. And we trusted them.
The investigators give Lindsay's parents the photos from the camera they found with Lindsay and Jason, along with notes the couple had written in a guest book at the beach trail entrance.
Gifts from the beach, the pictures, and these writings. There's a lot of gratitude when we see these pictures.
Lindsay wrote in the registry, "The sun is going down in the horizon, and all I see are the beams shining on the cliff face, and I know that God is awesome. I look around and I see his creation all around me."
How precious is that?
With no clues gleaned from the couple's photos and no ballistics evidence recovered from the beach, investigators know they face an uphill battle to determine what led to this double murder.
Early on, it became clear these were awesome people. Had no enemies, no beef with anyone. There was no one that would want to hurt them.
There was no comforting information as to who did this, why did they do it, what was their motive, because it was so bizarre. They were beautiful people that didn't have enemies. So we were left to latch on to whatever our brains could come up with, and most of that stuff wasn't very good.
Sonoma County detectives investigating the murders of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen can find no immediate explanation for why the couple was shot to death on an isolated beach, and nothing pointing to a suspect.
It's who did it? And you start looking into, okay, who did Jason and Lindsay know? Where have they been? Who could they have ran into? Do they have friends around here? Who could it be? Is there anyone that would want them dead?
Investigators hope to create a timeline of Lindsay and Jason's movements after they left the camp on August 13th, knowing that retracing the couple's steps might lead them to the answers they need.
At the time, tracking people was so more difficult back then than it is now. Jason and Lindsay didn't have cell phones. They had to check ATM, credit cards. Where did they go? Where did they stop?
A charge receipt informs detectives that the couple arrived at their first stop on the morning of Saturday, August 14th.
We know that they were in San Francisco, that they did a little bit of shopping. They used their credit card there and got a couple of small items.
They'd bought 2 tiny bottles of Tabasco on Fisherman's Wharf.
They were there having fun, tourists in San Francisco.
Detectives contact the store, but the owner doesn't remember Lindsay or Jason and doesn't have any security cameras.
They leave San Francisco, we believe, sometime early on Saturday.
Another charge receipt from later that afternoon shows that after leaving the city, Jason and Lindsay traveled around 60 miles north.
We know that they went to Bodega, which is a small town very near the coast.
We believe they stopped at a surf shop.
Detectives contact the surf shop owner. He tells them he does remember Lindsay and Jason.
By his account, they were inquiring kind of where to stay.
They had asked, where would be a good place for us to, spend the night and do some camping. And they were just, I think, generally steered toward the coast. After that, it's a little blurry, but we know that they ended up the coast, on the beach.
As police try to put the pieces of Lindsay and Jason's journey together, word of the murders hits the media.
My husband and I had the news on, and all of a sudden it came on the TV, picture of Lindsay and Jason, and it was terrible, really. Really was very difficult.
A lot of people were troubled by this murder because they felt like it could happen to them, it could happen to their family, it could happen to anybody who's visiting, spending the night out at the coast.
It had a big impact on the community. People were really unnerved and frightened and just kind of generally freaked out that this had happened. Some people bought guns or borrowed guns from neighbors. There was a community meeting. The whole room was sort of pressure-filled. The sheriff's office had no suspects. We had a lot of news coverage following the murders. Ultimately, they got over 1,000 tips and calls.
One in particular catches the investigators' attention. On Saturday, August 21st, a woman calls the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department and urges them to look into a man with a criminal record who frequents the Jenner area.
Sean Gallen, he was a known person. He had fish and game violations.
One of his girlfriends, she came forward and said, hey, he's not right. He's doing weird things.
He's a kind of self-styled survivalist. He killed animals without a license. He used drugs heavily.
Although Sean Gallen only has minor charges on his police record, it's the best potential lead detectives have. They rush to his home in Guerneville, 20 minutes inland from the beach in Jenner.
They questioned him about those murders, and he denied any involvement in the Jenner murders.
He was adamant. Denied it. Wasn't him.
At that time, they searched his apartment. They found guns, ammunition, Kevlar vest, a spear.
We had our thoughts, our suspicions.
There was a hope that there would be some way to link him to the Jenner murders.
Two weeks after the murders of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen, a tip leads police to a possible suspect, Sean Gallen. A search of his home turns up guns and several strange items.
He had frozen animals in his apartment. He was definitely kind of living on the fringes, alternate lifestyle. He was somewhat savvy with weapons, and he was, I would say it's fair to say, a bit antisocial.
But with no ballistics evidence recovered from the murder scene, Sean's guns cannot be connected to the murders, and nothing else found in his apartment ties him to the crime, despite investigators' suspicions. The case is back to square one. Devastating news for Lindsay's parents, who have remained in California seeking answers.
I think we kind of expected an arrest. We were there a couple weeks, and then when we came home, we had their memorial service to get ready for.
On September 4th, 2004, a week before Lindsay and Jason had been scheduled to be married, their friends and family gather at the Cutshalls' hometown church.
Lindsay's already picked out her flowers for the wedding, and the florist in town, when she found out what had happened, she made up her bouquet in a vase and brought it over to her memorial service, and it was really special, very special.
8 weeks after the murders, California authorities, desperate for new leads, offer a $50,000 reward for any information on Lindsay and Jason's deaths. It appears to reignite the case.
We got so many tips on this case to the point where there was a room, binders full, whole wall full of it. And these are hundreds of people coming forward saying they saw them. Whether they did or not, you could never confirm.
The tips range from suggestions that the couple stumbled onto a drug smuggling ring to them being victims of the notorious Zodiac killer. Detectives follow up on every one, but they all come up empty.
It's tough because it could be anything. People lie, people see things differently. You never know what you're getting, but you still have to look into every single one because you never know which one's going to be the tip that has some validity to it.
Weeks, then months, then years go by with no new developments, and yet detectives refuse to file the case away as unsolvable.
You want to work a case involving young kids like Jason and Lindsay, who were still in touch with their parents. You want to bring them some closure, any closure. You want them to have some answers. So it was something that kind of consumes you. Even though it could sometimes be referred to as a cold case, it was never a cold case. There was always a detective assigned to this case.
We probably went out yearly to talk to the detectives, and they always gave us hope, and they always told us we'd find that person.
We really grew to love the detectives and appreciate them, and just saw their passion and their desire to find the killer.
I admired Kathy and Chris so much because they didn't obsess about it. I'm sure at times when they were alone, that they wondered, would this ever be solved?
After 5 years, Chris and Kathy Cutshall get a glimmer of hope that they will finally get some answers.
There was a man who had been a fugitive, the main suspect in a 1972 killing on an island near Vancouver, or in British Columbia. It was a similar kind of killing, 2 young people on a beach who shot in the head.
After those murders, the suspect, Joseph Burgess, had vanished.
What happened in summer of 2009 was that this man turned up. He got in a shootout with sheriff's deputies in New Mexico and was killed in that shootout, along with the deputy that he shot.
Although the 2 homicides occurred 40 years apart, since Burgess had made his way to the U.S., detectives pursue a possible connection.
They had his DNA, and so we tested that DNA. And it didn't match with what we had.
That was a really frustrating moment for everybody involved who thought that perhaps they had gotten to the bottom of it.
Once again, the case threatens to go cold. Then, on Friday, March 24th, 2017, 13 years after Lindsay and Jason were murdered, a 911 call comes into the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, reporting a shooting. And it changes everything.
I remember getting that call and just going, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for.
March 24th, 2017. The Sonoma County, California Sheriff's Office receives an urgent call about a shooting at the Gallen family home. When detectives arrive, they discover 36-year-old Seamus Gallen has been shot to death. The suspected killer is his brother Sean.
What occurred is Sean was at home. His mom was home. Seamus was home as well. Sean was angry at his brother, Seamus, for whatever reason. I don't think we'll ever truly know. He kept a rifle at the time in his vehicle, and he brought it upstairs and pulled the trigger, let out a volley of shots, hitting Seamus.
The suspect's name has a familiar ring to investigators. Sean Gallen was the first suspect in the murders of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen 13 years earlier. Despite their suspicions, investigators could not find any evidence tying him to those murders. But there's plenty of evidence against him in this case.
There wasn't any good reason for it. And the day that he shot Seamus was just a normal day. Words were exchanged, and that was just all it took. Just an argument. He shot him point blank, and then he fled. They were able to track him down. There was a short chase. He was caught.
In my first interview with Sean, when he had killed Seamus, he confessed. It was clear. He described how he did it. It was a fully functional AR-15 style rifle. And he says he put it in full auto and pulled the trigger. I believe it was probably like 7 shots, the initial volley. The rifle stopped after that initial volley of shots. So he said he cleared it and then aimed at Seamus's neck and executed him right there. Once I got that out of Sean, then it was time to switch gears.
Now, Detective Horseman has the perfect opportunity to confront him about the 13-year-old murder.
So I asked him about the Jenner murders, and he denied it. He said it wasn't him. And I asked him, are you willing to take a polygraph? You know, clear your name. If this isn't you, this is the time. And he agreed to it. I remember when the detective was done with it, he met with me and the other detectives in our unit. He said, "This is your guy." He had no doubt in his mind that Sean was lying, and it was him.
It's a stunning development, but polygraphs are not admissible as evidence in California courts. Sean's DNA does not match what was found at the beach, so the investigators know they need to find concrete evidence to prove his guilt.
We started brainstorming what we were going to do, and with the new crime, we could then write search warrants. One of the search warrants was for Facebook, and we delved into all that information going back years, private messages, group messages.
When detectives examine Sean's social media, they discover a trove of disturbing posts.
Sean Gallen had occult images on social media, posts on Satanism, that kind of thing.
They also uncover a private message with disturbing implications.
One of the private messages that we located was from one of his exes, and she had messaged him, "Maybe I should just go turn you in for that 50 grand reward, and why don't you go shoot some more people and try to get away with it?" And at the time, there was only one case here in Sonoma County that had a 50 grand reward, and that was this case. So that stood out. Like, this girl, he told her, she knows, she's threatening this is our guy.
Detectives immediately track down Sean's ex-girlfriend, but 13 years after the murders, she's a long way from California.
She was now in England. And I said, if we can get to England and talk with her, maybe we can get her on our side and see if she'll help us.
Less than 24 hours later, Detective Horseman is on a transatlantic flight.
We get to England and to the hotel room, and I'm going through my phone, and I see I got a voicemail. I hit play, and it's somebody from the Sonoma County Jail, one of the correctional deputies there, saying, "Hey, Sean Gallen just passed us a note saying he's ready to confess to 2 murders." It would have taken us too long to get back from London, so I wasn't there for the interview. It was one of those things you can't wait. Somebody's ready to confess. You don't want him to get cold feet. There was something inside him that tormented him, and he knew he had to finally be out with it.
In a small room inside the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, Sean Gallen begins giving investigators a detailed account of Lindsay and Jason's final moments and what he did to them on Fishhead Beach on August 14th, 2004.
He was looking for wild boar to hunt when he sees these people.
For whatever reason, he didn't like these 2 people camping on the beach, or maybe he thought of it as his beach. I don't know. But what he did say was that he had made a decision that he was going to kill them. And he said that he had to force himself to kill them. He had been hearing voices that were torturing him, that were tormenting him.
He finds sleeping on the beach what ends up being Jason and Lindsay.
"13 years after Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen were shot to death on an isolated California beach, Sean Gallen is finally confessing to the murders.
He said he approached them from the south. He's walking on the soft sand, so they had no idea he was there.
He said that he had shot Jason first, and that Lindsay had woken up, very briefly and made a sound of some sort, and then he had shot her and killed her.
He said that after that, he collected the casings. He claims to have hung around them for a little bit of time, and ultimately he leaves.
These victims never knew or met Sean Gallen. They hadn't done anything to him. They didn't have anything that he wanted. It's just utterly inexplicable. The only explanation that I can offer is that Sean Gallen just enjoys the act of killing. My take on it is that once he realized that he was completely busted for the murder of his brother, he understood that he was done. He was going to prison probably for life. When he confessed to the murders, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a false confession. He told them that he had put shell casings from the murder weapon into a soda can and tossed it into some blackberry bushes near what had been Sean Gallen's father's house.
Investigators head to the location, hoping the evidence still exists there.
They found this soda can from more than a decade before that had these shell casings that completely corroborated what he had told them. We also charged him with felon in possession of a firearm, possession of ammunition, charges that would put him in prison for life.
When he was arrested, all these things come flooding back and all these memories. It was a relief that everybody had been waiting for years, but also a shock. It's a really long time to have anyone not know why they died or what they died from. I think the hardest part was that it was a mindless crime, that it didn't have a reason, that it ended two people's lives who were phenomenal.
Finally, we knew it would happen. We were happy. We were sorry that another person had to be killed for this, but it was like, well, here it is. It all came together.
Ultimately, Sean did plead guilty to the murders of Jason and Lindsay.
He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms plus 94 years on top of that.
He will serve the rest of his life in prison.
I miss the spontaneity that they had, that they were up for anything at any time. Always excited about life.
We were very good friends, and I miss that. She had the best hugs. I miss her smile. She had a great smile, great outlook on life. Both Jason and Lindsay, they could teach me so much.
Knowing how happy they were is comforting, very comforting. And knowing that they fell asleep that night on the beach and they woke up in heaven.
They were happy together and loved each other and loved being together, and God took them home together.